Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well. It's going to be a great and a fun day. I passed the first test of the day for me, and I didn't knock over the TV. See that? I did a good job. I won't promise I won't do it later, but I didn't do it the first time I walked by it. Good afternoon. My name is Rafael Sestero. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Community Preservation Corporation. And I want to say welcome and thank you for being here today to help CPC celebrate our 50th anniversary. We're going to do things a little differently than perhaps others do when they throw parties to celebrate. We're going to make you work for your party. And we decided that we wanted to not just host a fantastic cocktail party, but we wanted to do something interesting, something that would be provocative and thought-creating. And look, we're still going to have a great party. I'm looking forward to Governor Hochul coming and speaking to all of us. So I hope you can stay through the end and to the cocktail party. But we didn't want to just have a cocktail party that celebrates the past 50 years. We wanted and simply focused on the past. To be sure, those 50 years have been important, and a lot has changed since CPC was founded. When we were debating what to do, we kept coming back to the theme of innovation. How, over the course of 50 years, innovative ideas, policies, and programs and partnerships have defined our history and our mission. In 1974, the founding of CPC was an innovation that probably seemed very radical at the time. Think about creating a self-sustaining nonprofit lender funded by a consortium of banks with a mission to go into New York City's underserved communities and deliver capital to help stem the blight and abandonment that marked that time in our city's history. That was the time in which the Bronx was burning, when the Daily News, in response to President Ford's refusal to bail out the city, ran a headline that said, "Ford to city, drop dead." Every year during that time, 20 to 30,000 rental units were lost due to abandonment, fire, or demolition. I'm sure many of you have seen the old photo of President Jimmy Carter standing in a rubble-filled lot in the South Bronx. That was the state of our city when CPC was founded. It was bleak, our communities were struggling, and the people who lived there were hurting, and a solution demanded outside-of-the-box thinking. Our mission was to start small, be humble, and deploy capital to help restore and rehabilitate housing and keep neighborhoods from falling into the cycle of blight and abandonment. I'm not saying CPC was the only answer, but our founding and our business model was an important innovation of the time. We need to give credit to a lot of people during that time, including Mayor Ed Koch for his massive investment in our housing stock and his refusal to close off entire neighborhoods to the city and instead create the engine for its rebirth. He listened to the many community voices, the neighbors who stayed in those communities and said, "We're not going anywhere. We want our communities to survive and thrive." It was a different time. Everybody was rowing in the same direction to solve the housing problem that the city faced. CPC partnered with city, state, and federal government, with pension funds, faith-based organizations, advocates, banks, developers, policy wonks, all of us working together. I'm not calling anybody out with the policy wonk comment, I'm just saying. I've been called that before. So today, instead of dealing with mass abandonment, our housing falling down around us, we have a completely different problem. It's a problem of supply and affordability, and it's not just in New York City. It's in every city in America. It's in our urban centers, suburban communities, and rural communities all across the country. So when we were thinking about 50 years of innovation and impact, we began to think about the challenges of today and what the next 50 years holds. What are the important innovations, new ideas, maybe some old ideas that could see the light of day again, that can put us on a path to meeting this moment? So throughout the summer, the CPC team reached out to thought leaders, peer organizations, practitioners, developers, and others from across the housing industry. Our goal was to generate 50 innovative ideas to help solve the housing crisis with a focus on affordability, sustainability, and reducing the racial wealth gap. And I'll be honest, we had many meetings about this, and I was the one saying, 50? We're never going to get 50 ideas. It's too much work. It's impossible. Everybody has day jobs. But as usual, that happens to me in the course of my almost 13 years at CPC, the team at CPC achieved results beyond any expectations. And as it turns out, as much as our housing problem has changed, some things have never changed. Going through this process, seeing the ideas that were submitted, it gave me hope. It was exciting to see that there was energy around innovation. There was energy around what else can we do. It wasn't the same old, same old. We need more subsidy. We need the federal government as a partner. All of those things remain true, but the ideas, the core, were about innovations that can help move the industry forward in a very, very significant way. It was great to see that the people in our industry, the people who work on these problems day in and day out, regardless of where across the country they work, are as engaged and as enthusiastic as ever. It feels like maybe we are rowing in the same direction, working with the same common sense of collaboration and commitment that defined our history and our industry. Thank you to everybody who is here today to share their ideas in person. We couldn't have all 50 of our ideas here, but we have some really great ideas that you're going to get to hear this afternoon. And all of the other ideas are on our website, where you can find Innovative Ideas link on our website. So we've got a great afternoon planned. We're fortunate to have half the people who gave us innovative ideas agree to come and share their ideas with us. And we've grouped them into 5 categories: leveraging technology to streamline access to affordable housing, accelerating resiliency and the clean energy transition, expanding supply amid a national housing crisis, housing solutions to close the racial wealth gap, and homeownership as a foundation for economic opportunity. You'll hear from 3 or 4 speakers in each of those categories, and then we'll break down and have a little bit of a Q&A session after each one of the panels. And then to round out the afternoon, we have a terrific final panel that will be moderated by my good friend and CPC board chair, Richard Roberts. And we have some very special guests, thought leaders in their own right from across the country. Jamar Adams, who's the managing principal at Essence Development. Sean Donovan, former HUD secretary and current CEO at Enterprise Community Partners. Amy Hovey, who's the CEO and executive director of the Michigan Housing Development Authority. Jeremy Johnson, who's the head of City Community Capital, and Doug Shoemaker, who's the former president of Mercy Housing California. I look forward to a great discussion with those panelists about the ideas presented today and other ideas that maybe we didn't get to. It should be engaging and thought-provoking. And after our panel wraps up, we'll have a short happy hour where we look to connect together before we open the doors to the throngs of people that'll be here to celebrate CPC's 50th year. And I can tell you, as somebody who's been in the industry for 35 plus years here in New York, nobody, and I mean nobody, throws a party like CPC. So you should be sure to stay around. Okay, lastly, and I promise to keep this short so we can get to the more interesting stuff, I do want to thank Citi for their long-time partnership and collaboration. They've played a big role in supporting today's event, but the relationship goes much, much deeper than that. Citi has been one of our most important and consistent investors and partners over the last few decades. They've stood by CPC during some of our most challenging years and continued to believe in us, our mission, our partnerships, and our ability to execute on our business, and the impact that we've had together has been enormous. So thank you to my good friend Jeremy Johnson from City Community Capital for being here today and to be part of our symposium panel. And thank you to everybody at Citi for your support and commitment to the work that we do. Thank you all for coming today. I know it's going to be a fun and exciting day, and I hope you'll stick around, as I said before. Now that's the 4th time I said that. I'm really selling the party good, aren't I? But I hope you all stick around and have a good time. I look forward to the day. It's going to be fascinating and interesting. And thank you again for being here. And now I think it's time for our first panel. That's going to be led by our board member, Ingrid Ellen from NYU.
My name is Ingrid Ellen, and I'm on a member. I'm not the chair, Raphael, I am a member of the CPC Board of Directors and a professor of urban policy and planning at the Wagner School at NYU, and I'm a faculty director at the NYU Furman Center. And I also had the pleasure of serving on the review committee for this Innovative Solutions for the Future of Housing, and it was really exciting, as Raphael said, to read all of these ideas. And I want to be clear that, that Raphael talked about sort of orienting this event towards celebrating innovation, but this isn't about bashing our existing programs. We have a lot of very effective and critical housing programs today. CPC and many of those in this room work with critical housing subsidies and programs, and which provide tremendous benefits to the families that receive them and participate in them. But many of the current programs face implementation challenges and don't live up to their full potential in addressing the housing crisis. And so CPC was part of the idea was also to find innovations that address some of the operational challenges faced by existing programs. And innovations, in other words, don't have to be about brand new programs, right? They actually can be, importantly, about making the ones that we have work better. And these operational efficiencies are not just, in the word of Raphael, wonky tweaks, right? I think you implicitly called me a policy wonk there, which is fine. I own that. But I think these operational efficiencies are not just about wonky tweaks. They really can make meaningful differences in people's lives and help them find housing, help them move into that housing more quickly, and help them stay in those homes over time. And I think these operational innovations are often overlooked, which is why I'm particularly excited to be moderating this session. I'm excited about all the sessions, but this session I think I wanted to moderate because I think it highlights three really interesting and promising ideas for unlocking efficiencies in our current system through leveraging technology and data at scale. And specifically, the presenters in this section are going to be answering three critical questions. One is, the first is, Laura is going to be talking about how we can streamline the lease-up process for landlords renting to housing choice voucher holders and generally voucher holders more generally. And I've been doing work at the Furman Center with Kathy O'Regan and Sarah Stroshak and on the Housing Choice Voucher Program, and while the voucher program provides enormous benefits to the families that are able to use their vouchers, we've estimated now that nationally, only about 55% of families who receive vouchers, that's after waiting for like 2.5 or 3 years to receive them, are actually able to use them. And to be clear, this means that 45% have to return their vouchers to the housing agencies because they can't find a home in the time that they're allotted, a home and a willing landlord, eligible home. And so that's pretty tragic. So I think finding ways to help more voucher holders successfully move into homes as more voucher recipients is really critical. The second question is, how do we get people into our existing housing programs more quickly? So oftentimes, we often sort of overlook this step in the process, but many times we have available housing units that are sitting empty while families who are in need are waiting to get their income certified to ensure that they're eligible. And once again, this is pretty tragic, right? That we sort of have that mismatch. And third, how can we help renters, including those living in subsidized housing, manage financial shocks and stay current on their rent? And again, it's pretty tragic to see a family lose their home because they can't make their full rent payment on the first of the month, even though many times that, within a month, within a few months, or within a year, they would be able to catch up. And so I'm excited to hear more about, and I think you will be excited to hear more about these three innovations that address these questions. And I'm going to introduce the speakers in a second, but before I do so, I just want to sort of one housekeeping thing, which is that you all have note cards and pens on your chairs. And what you should do is you should write your questions on the note cards, and then people, I think, are going to be picking them up, collecting those, and bringing them up to those of us, the moderators of each panel. And the panelists will try to answer as many questions as they can in the allotted time. And so with that, I'm really pleased to introduce the three speakers for this session that's leveraging data and technology to speed up access to housing. First, and I'm not going to give them the full bios that the introductions they deserve, but in the interest of time, but Laura Lazarus first, who is co-founder and CEO of Anthos Home, who's going to be talking about her idea to streamline leasing for landlords renting to voucher holders. Second, Christine Wendell, founder of Pronto, who's going to be talking about her solution for software to automate affordable housing income certifications. And last but not least, Shin, Inoue, co-founder and CEO of the Flagstone initiative, who's going to tell us about his idea for a tech-driven upstream eviction prevention program. So please join me in welcoming the panelists and invite them to come up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Lazarus, CEO of Anthos Home, and I'm honored to be here with you today. For more than 30 years, I've worked on different sides of the affordable housing crisis. I have been a national affordable housing developer, a nonprofit shelter and supportive housing provider, and a corporate real estate attorney. I've also worked for New York City's housing department. In all of this time, some of the most heartbreaking and frustrating stories I heard were from people who were homeless and had a housing voucher that should enable them to exit shelter, but who remained stuck in limbo for months or even years. When I first met Jalen, who you can see on the screen, I believe, she had exited the foster care system and had been actively looking for housing for months. She was an outgoing, professional, motivated, and organized college student and employed part-time. If anyone should have been able to secure housing using a voucher, it should have been Jalen. Although she found and applied for many apartments over 7 months, as soon as landlords heard that she would be using a voucher, they would stop returning her calls. Housing vouchers are an incredibly effective solution to homelessness, paying the majority of rent on affordable housing to enable low-income families to access a permanent residence. Yet they are notoriously difficult to use, like Ellen just mentioned. In 2022, only 53% of those who received a New York City Housing Authority voucher were able to use them. Nationally, the statistics are similar. The result in New York is that thousands of people with housing vouchers remain trapped in homelessness. This disconnect between what is an amazing resource and the inability to use it is what led us to see if we could solve this problem. What if we could have several apartments on hand for a family who suddenly found themselves homeless? What if that family could move into a home several weeks later with minimal paperwork requirements? I co-founded Anthos Home 2 years ago to do just that and help people like Jalen move from shelter into permanent housing more quickly and efficiently. Our vision is a seamless process. Think of it as a matchmaking service between the families who need housing and the landlords who have units available. So, how does it work? Our innovative, flexible funding model combines public and private dollars. With this funding, we have reduced the average time it takes for a voucher holder to move into permanent housing from more than a year to just a few months, an immeasurable difference for those who are experiencing homelessness. Anthos Home partners with housing providers across the city, landlords, brokers, and managing agents, to remove the risk and administrative burden of renting to voucher holders. We find and reserve units so they are available for potential tenants to view and move in right away. In a city with a 1.4% vacancy rate, having units on hold is essential to this process. By developing relationships with more than 250 landlords and providing 24/7 customer support, we have been able to consistently maintain a housing bank of more than 100 units across the city. The housing bank allows us to quickly match tenants to units that best suit their needs. The flexible funding allows us to make that transition possible and to ensure families remain housed for the long term. We help with moving costs, application fees, repairs required for the voucher, missing government payments, and miscellaneous and emergency expenses. In Jalen's case, we were able to move her into an apartment she loves within 3 months of referral. However, as with most participants, Jalen needed additional support once she moved in. The transition to permanent housing can be a bumpy one, and we are there to make sure all issues are resolved for a successful long-term stay. With Jalen, she found her utility bills were significantly higher than expected and beyond her ability to pay. Anthos Home's team of experts went to work, engaging with the landlord and hiring an electrician to identify the problem. It turned out that Jalen was being charged for her neighbor's electricity bills, in addition to her own. We stepped in and worked with both the landlord and the utility company to quickly resolve the issue. Jalen graduated from our aftercare services once we helped her recertify her housing voucher and renew her lease at her 1-year anniversary. She is now thriving. Obtaining an apartment has allowed her to build the life she's always wanted, to create a home, get married, and start a family. She is now planning her return to work with a nonprofit organization that helps foster youth. Jalen was our very first program participant. Since Anthos Home began operations last summer, we have moved more than 200 households into permanent apartments, and we have accomplished it 6 times faster than families who are trying to leave shelter on their own. In doing so, we have achieved 100% housing stability for our participants. We are so grateful to have been able to put this initiative into practice, and it is only possible because of our partnership with key government and nonprofit housing and homelessness agencies throughout New York. There is no other organization in New York City with our singular focus, our expertise, and ability to optimize voucher utilization. The Anthos Home innovative model is working. It is also scalable, with the potential to be a groundbreaking solution to homelessness, both in New York City and beyond. Thank you.
Why does affordable housing, leasing, and compliance take so long? I came at this from the asset management side, where I oversaw lease-ups that had an affordable component. And like a lot of you who have touched lease-ups, we had a budget, we had a certain number of units that need to be filled, and we did not hit those numbers. That's probably a somewhat familiar story. On the resident side, it also takes a ton of work. I'm Wendell. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Pronto Housing. We provide software to streamline the income certification process. When we were founded in 2020, we started the same way that a lot of marketing agents do this work. We had a manual process. We collect a ton of documentation from applicants. So they're bringing in all of their financial documents, all of their personal identification documents, and we were filling out forms manually, tracking things in Excel, and making that expression. It was not a good process, and it was definitely not a fast process. On the resident side, we had an applicant named Nicole, and we had a Zoom meeting set up. But she thought it was an in-person meeting because that's the traditional process. That's what she was used to. She'd been through that a ton of times. So she schlepped like an hour into our office in downtown Manhattan. She left her kid in public housing with her mom where she lived, and she was balancing multiple jobs. So she took time to come meet me in person to give me all of these financial documents in the hope that she might get a home. She didn't even know, right? There's no guarantee that she was actually going to get that unit. It doesn't need to be that way. The process of applying for a market rate unit is really simple. You can go online. I could lease an apartment probably in the same time that I'm talking to you right now and sign a lease. For affordable housing, those applicants are not given that experience. And that happens every single year for the annual recertification process. Pronto software is like TurboTax for that income certification, and it's set up for the specific affordable housing program on that property. So it's not just LIHTC, not just HUD, it reflects all those blended requirements. It's a win-win for the resident and for the property team. On the resident side, there's a real human cost there of how that resident is spending their time. For me, when I think about how I spend my time and the mark I want to have on the world, this is the problem I've chosen to solve. And for the resident, that's a real cost on their time, and I find that absolutely heartbreaking. Today, Pronto is in 20 states. We work across a very wide range of affordable programs, from federal to a lot of local programs, and we work with some of the largest property managers in the country. So when you think about how you spend your time, your lease-up goals, how your residents are spending their time, it's probably not on paperwork is how you want to be spending your time. So please think of Pronto next time you have a lease-up or you're touching a lease-up or annual compliance.
My name is Shin Inoue. I'm a co-founder and CEO of the Flagstone initiative. And let's see if get the slides up. Here we go. All right. The Flagstone initiative is a nonprofit organization that provides tech-driven financial stability programs upstream so that we can prevent eviction downstream. And we think it's a win for everyone. Residents, landlords, the community. And we do this because, we've seen so many hardworking Americans facing this unthinkable prospect of eviction and homelessness. And at the heart of that, there's this, what we call the financial hardship domino effect. And it starts with tight cash flow, living check to check. 60% of Americans live check to check. On top of that, there's no savings. 45% of Americans don't have any savings whatsoever. What does that mean? When something happens, it inevitably happens because it's life. All of us experience things like your car breaking down, or your kids get sick. All these things have an impact on your finances. But if you don't have any kind of cushion, it leads to you're late on rent. That quickly becomes an eviction process, and God forbid, sometimes going to homelessness. And when you look at that, right, we spend a lot of time and money on the back end of this dominoes, right? Homelessness, eviction, arrears, all these are things that we all spend a lot of time on. But what if we spend a little bit more time and effort upstream before all these dominoes from going all the way down? What does that look like? We call it upstream prevention. And you're thinking like, upstream prevention? It's been around for a long time. That's not innovation. It's true. The basic concept's been around for a long time. But technology makes it a lot easier to do it for a lot of people. So this is only possible now to do it at scale. And this is the most important concept here, the big idea. Technology-driven upstream prevention. And we think an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. As an example, how do we do that, right? How do we do that? We can give you an example. This is what we do, but it doesn't have to be this way. Two things. Rent loan. It's a very simple concept for small shocks, designed for small shocks. It's a $500 no fee, no interest loan. It helps you cover some unexpected things that happen, small things, but it can help you cover that by paying rent of that amount. And the resident pays us back directly $20 each week for 25 weeks, exactly $500. This way, you don't have to resort to payday loans, overdrafting, or being late on rent. This can cover that, ease that pain, provide that cushion. The second idea is rent splitting. We allow the residents to split rent. That's it? Yes, that's it. Instead of paying all of that rent on the first, half of it on the first, second half of it on the 15th. It doesn't seem a lot, but it's really meaningful, especially if you're living check to check. 30% of our residents, when they pay rent, all of it on the first, all is gone. Nothing's left in the bank account. What do you do until the next paycheck 14 days later, right? You can imagine how difficult that is. So if you just actually half it, cut it in half, you create that little bit of cushion. These things don't seem a lot, right? They seem such small interventions, but it actually does make a difference. Here's one case study that I wanted to share with you from Bessemer, Alabama. We had this opportunity to actually help support a group of properties that had access to our programs, and the other side didn't. The ones with our program, for the first 6 months, the delinquency rate went down. The other side without it, because we were approaching that, at that time, a year ago, approaching that holiday season when the cash flow is tight, the delinquency went up. So at which point, our property management company, which managed both of those, said, you know what, no more experiments. Can you actually do this on the other side and provide that service? And we did, and since then, it's about a year now, both of places have lower delinquency. And then on average, what we see is the program users have a lower delinquency rate, 37% or so, than non-users. And that is also leading to people sticking around longer. They have 56% longer tenure, which is indicating, we believe, that they have less financial challenges and they can stick around. They're not forced to move for financial reasons. And that's good for the residents, that's good for the landlords, and of course for the community too. So I hope that this quick presentation gave you a little bit of an idea that even the small, seemingly small interventions can have a really meaningful impact as long as we use technology to make it available to a lot of people, and we also do it early before the problems blow up. Thank you.
Thanks to all of you. Those are fantastic. Oh, good. I do have some questions. I was going to say I have no problem asking my own questions. I've got lots of them. But I do want to remind you that if you do have questions, write them down and somebody will come and collect them. So let me ask this question, which is that I think that many of you sort of are offering these, really creative technological solutions that currently are operating outside of government systems, right? These are sort of, privately funded nonprofits. And this sort of a general question for all of you, are there opportunities to partner with this public sector to improve their system and to basically scale your innovations? So that's a nice question, I think, for all of you, for each of you.
Do you want to start? Sure. We actually can't do our work without partnership with government. We're working with government every day because we're working with their vouchers, their process. So I think the idea is that if we can continue to build on what we learn to help make those moves faster, more efficient, we have a lot of learning that we've found while we're working with these vouchers that are issued by various government agencies, kind of providing that feedback back as a feedback loop to streamline the kind of bureaucracy, some of the challenges that are involved in terms of timeframes, requirements. And I think we see, for example, we do apartment inspections in some circumstances that can really expedite the process because it's in our control. We're also putting together each voucher, as Shin went through, requires a lot of documentation. We do that ourselves with our kind of operational expert team. We understand all the different variations and requirements. In New York City, there are at least 10 to 12 different vouchers with all their own little requirements. And we really understand those and can expedite those and can be a partner to all the other kind of government agencies. When we're submitting them, those packages are really well put together. And that reduces the time that a government agency needs to review it because they know that it's...
Right. I guess the question is are there ways that you sort of are feeding back that information to the government agencies so that, I don't want to say you'll work yourself out of a job, but ideally, we wouldn't need a nonprofit to be doing all this, the public program itself.
There's that, and then there's also the fact that we're really reaching out to landlords in a way that government doesn't and isn't doing right now. And the partnership there, the support that hand-holding that we provide landlords is incredibly critical to making sure that they're interested in working in the process. When they have an issue, they call us. If for whatever reason a government payment is not made, which does happen, We pay it, then we follow up with the government agency to see what's going on, figure out repayment. You know, it's really like, it's like a way to grease the wheels to make things a lot smoother between kind of these outside parties in government and the resource that's available.
So, Laura? Christine? Sorry.
So today, Pronto works within the confines of regulatory requirements. So we call it a certification configuration. It's the questionnaire and the form package. Different markets have more rigorous documentation or lack thereof. In New York, there's a marketing handbook, there's a set of forms, and so the documentation here is quite robust, which is great. We know exactly what to set up. We also integrate directly with some government websites. So in New York, we integrate directly with Housing Connect. So people apply on Housing Connect, and then where we come in is that qualification process. One area where we're looking to expand partnership and where regulatory agencies, cities can work directly with Pronto is in two ways. So one is getting that documentation set. So even in New York City, we work with many different marketing agents, and even though those forms are published, people do this process differently. Some do verifications, some don't, some do calculations slightly differently, and that impacts the applicant experience. So one way is to have a set form package that is essentially like blessed by the city. So it's saying this is the Pronto setup for this particular program for this particular city. That's particularly relevant for local programs, usually inclusionary programs. Frequently the default is LIHTC compliance, which it creates this environment of over-compliance, basically. A local program doesn't require applicants to submit this documentation, and yet it is being asked of the applicants and creating unnecessary work for really all parties. The second piece of it is rethinking how applicants or the annual recertification is done operationally. So different cities have different ways of doing this. Some are centralizing that administration with a nonprofit. Some, like New York, have marketing agents do this work. And so for Pronto, we can provide a software solution for cities to centralize that, either in partnership with a service team or with a nonprofit who's doing the actual work, or with the government using our software directly.
That's great. Thank you. And Shin?
Yeah, you know, as the emergency rental assistance money dries up, we're seeing cities and municipalities reaching out to us for more efficient way of preventing eviction, because you know the resources are limited now, right? And that I think is and we're hoping that we're showing some different ways to be a little bit more cost effective in helping people. And that is in the form of more upstream prevention or more technology-driven loan products or whatever it may be. I think that's the connection that we're starting to see.
Yeah. So, well, you know, I actually think we probably don't have time for another question because I'm looking at this clock and we're down to single digits of seconds. So I'm sorry, because I've got many more questions, but please join me in thanking these three really fantastic panelists. So.